Kia ora, Marky here with part 2 of this series, which I still haven't entirely settled on a title yet. And partly, I've got to think very carefully about this because some of the words that you know, like paedophile, things like that, attract censorship. So I might get my channel closed down. YouTube are funny, actually; they do some funny things. So I know for a fact that they have just randomly shut down a couple of channels or demonetized a couple of channels. This channel isn't monetized, but they do kind of funny things. They're very, very active. And I guess these things are kind of policed, if you like, or reviewed by artificial intelligence, for want of a better word, not by people. So if I use kind of the B word in the title, it might kind of raise alarm bells and things like that. So it's interesting. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is I was kind of conscious of using a title like that, not wanting to have my face as the thumbnail picture. You know, because people might think that, you know, if it says paedophile and then it's got my face, it's like, oh, you know, this is a picture of a paedophile. So this is interesting stuff, and we'll get more into this. I think we're going to talk about stigma and scapegoating and stuff like that. So we'll get more into that. But I want to talk about some other things first. Really, there's so many angles to this topic. Thank you for all the feedback that I've had, by the way. I floated this just to a few people on Facebook and got some really good feedback. What I'd really like though is you give me some great feedback, but I'd really love it if you guys could put the feedback underneath the video rather than on the YouTube comment, because if on the YouTube comment no one will see it. If you put it on the video, and if you're able to cut and paste, you know, anything that you've already said, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, if you've challenged what I've said, it's great to have it there so people can see it. So please post in the comments. That would be great. So let's do a quick recap from last time. Okay, so a paedophile and a sex offender are two different things. Okay, there often is an overlap. Okay, think of it like a Venn diagram. Remember Venn diagrams from school? I mean, I hate maths, but I like Venn diagrams. They're kind of simple. I can get my neurodiverse head around a Venn diagram. So two circles, and then you've got the overlap in between. So one circle would be paedophiles, one circle would be sex offenders, and there's a group of people who are paedophiles and sex offenders, but there's also a group of people who are sex offenders but not paedophiles, and a group of people who are paedophiles but not sex offenders. Okay, so the press, they use phrases like convicted paedophile. There is no such thing as a convicted paedophile because it's not illegal to be a paedophile. Paedophile is about what goes on in your head. Okay, so people aren't arrested for paedophilia. They're arrested, rightly so, for acting on paedophilia. Okay, for sexual acts with children, which are never okay. Okay, so that's the key message. Some people, it's interesting with the feedback, people actually some people actually missed that point, didn't get that point, which I thought I'd kind of made quite clearly. But I think one of the problems is this subject is so emotive that people don't listen, people don't hear. One of the things that I talk about quite a lot, because I do things like anger management and anxiety management with clients, and one of the things that happens is when we're very emotive, the more sophisticated functioning parts of the brain shut down, and we go into our brainstem, you know, the more primitive part of the brain, which is all about kind of sex, fight, flight, and food. The five F's. So we're not able to think, you know, and I think this is one of the dangers. And also we're kind of brainwashed around this subject. So we're reactive, or people just react, you know. That's why I'm kind of been quite wary about even talking about this stuff, and quite hesitant, you know. So am I a bit cowardly? You know, this is the thing that I ask myself, you know, should I be bolder with this video? Should I be using the P word? Should I be kind of really out there and making a statement? Or should I be kind of cautious and tentative and careful? But thank you very much for the feedback that I've had that's come through Facebook. So that was the essence of what we talked about last time, and I gave so I talked about the, you know, we believe, and we know this actually because there are groups of there are internet fora for paedophiles who don't want to harm children. You know, they get together and they support one another to remain abstinent. Okay, so just because you have a sexual drive doesn't mean you have to act on it. You know, it's a little bit like, you know, kind of the Catholic Church's view on homosexuality. You know, which I don't agree with, which is that, you know, you shouldn't it's fine. It's not a sin to have homosexual tendencies, but it's a sin to act on them. I don't believe it's a sin to act on homosexual tendencies. I think that's an area where the church needs to kind of get with the program, really, and I think they are moving in that direction. So paedophiles who don't offend. Okay, we know that they exist. We don't know how many there are because, you know, very few people will, you know, come forth and say, hello, I'm a paedophile, because the risks that they take of, you know, physical assault or whatever it might be. And we know that there are sex offenders who are not paedophiles. And how do we know this? Phallometric testing. So revisit part 1 if you can't remember the phallometric testing, but it's a scientific way of measuring what people are turned on by and what people are not turned on by, in essence. Okay, so there are 2 examples of non-paedophilic child sex offenders that I gave. One was what we call kind of sexual surrogacy, where often a parent will use one of their children as a sexual outlet if they can't get hold of an adult. Okay, appalling. All of this stuff is appalling, isn't it? Really, it sort of goes without saying, really. That's one example. The other example is sadism. Some sadists will act out sexually because they know that they know the harm that it causes, and by God, does it cause some harm. But they're not paedophilic in orientation. So if you tested them phallometrically, they wouldn't show up. So they're not primary paedophiles, if you like. And then there's a new case of people. Now, what would really help is to watch my other video series on the effects of porn on the brain. Okay, because it gives a lot of the background science for this. This is all quite a science-based series that we're doing, really. So I'm not talking off the top of my head here. This is all based on evidence and research that different people have done. What I'm doing really is collating and putting together lots of different pieces of research, try and kind of give a kind of cohesive picture, really. So what we're finding, so there's a whole big thing about internet pornography. Internet pornography is different to old school pornography in the way it affects the brain. Okay, there's lots of other things we could say about internet pornography, but we'll keep it to that. Okay, and the speed of it is about the speed of the images that that a user can see over a given period of time. The number of images that a user can see over a given period of time, which has never before been achievable and is basically too much for people's brains, to put it very, very simply. I go into the science of it in the other video series. So what's happening is people are saturating. It's a bit like heroin. Very, very like heroin, really. What was the Guns N' Roses? I used to do a little, but the little wouldn't do, and then the little got more and more. Okay, so what happens is the way the porn affects the high-speed internet porn affects the brain is that it's highly stimulating. It messes up all the dopamine. And therefore, in order to get the same kind of stimulation and the same buzz and the same hit and the same high, people need to take things to a higher level, which is why porn in many ways is getting more extreme. Okay, so people might start with something kind of fairly mild, and then they start to get more and more selective and go, and this is why people are getting more kind of fetishistic in a way, because the porn is drawing people to kind of, there's so many images that people can see, so people start to seek out, why would you choose this image over that image? Okay, so what happens is somebody kind of starts out with a fairly broad, general kind of sexual interest. So if they must say they're heterosexual and are interested in women, they might like looking at images of any woman from 20 to 30. Okay, but then what happens is that over time they start to get more, or they only just like women with blonde hair, or they only like women with shaved genitals, or they start to get into older women, so what happens is over the course of somebody's kind of pornography using career, they start off looking at almost anything, and then by the end of it they're looking at one-eyed albino amputees wearing latex. Okay, now looking at one-eyed albinos wearing latex, it probably isn't illegal, and probably isn't harmful, but what happens is that a lot of people, not with any inherent paedophilic orientation will start to seek more and more extremes. And also shock value is, the adrenaline, so pornography isn't necessarily just about sexual arousal. It can be about, adrenaline buzzes as well. So what's happening is, and the forbidden is always something that's attractive. So what we're finding, okay, this isn't my theory, this isn't my thoughts, is what we're finding is people are moving. So pornography is kind of becoming, adult pornography is becoming a gateway to child pornography. So people who have had no sexual interest in children for the bulk of their lives are starting to seek out child pornography. Okay, but they're not inherently paedophilic. Now you could argue they're becoming paedophilic, but are they actually interested in sexual contact with children? Probably not. Okay, probably not. So I'm going to wrap this one up now because I noticed we reached the 10-minute mark, and unfortunately, I need to keep these videos quite short to upload them. So what we need to talk about is what makes a paedophile and what defines a paedophile. I think that's quite an important distinction to make, and there's some interesting fairly recent research into this, which is fascinating, really, really interesting. Okay, but it doesn't answer all the questions. Okay, so we're going to come back in for a part 3, and we'll get into that. So it's the work of Dr. James Cantor, Canadian doctor, and he came up with some really interesting material. So if you want to find out about that, catch me in part 3. Rangi Marie.